this topic is very close to home for me. And it's because if you were listening to me in a dark room and nobody told you that I was female, you would typically assume it was a man that was speaking. And so I grew up in the middle of boys, being very comfortable around boys, having a lot of male friends. And I would comfortably say that the very first set of people that validated me, even as a girl growing up in Nigeria, were my friends, my boyfriends. And so I've grown to respect and love and trust men because whilst other girls, felt like this is what an average girl should look like, the boys always protected and validated me as one of them. And that's why, for whatever it is worth, I celebrate tremendously the men in my life. I'm a first child of 4 children. My dad didn't wait, wasn't too patient to stay back to raise us. So my mom raised me alone, along with my three siblings. And of course, good enough reason for a lot of girls to hate men, to judge men, to be hard on men, and to believe that men aren't great people. I think that for everything that my dad didn't wait to do for me, God compensated me in an amazing husband and a fantastic son. Aside from the fact that my husband is a tall glass of hot chocolate, he's also a remarkably present human being in my life, not just as my husband, but as my leader, my champion, my friend, my sounding board. And I know that for whatever it is worth, if my husband was a classic example of what men should be or the space that men should hold for women, I'll choose men time and time again. Let me start by saying that before boys learned to dream, they were told to survive. Nobody gives the average boy a chance, not in Nigeria, not in China, not in America, not in any part of the world. People typically expect a higher standard from men and boys than they do from women. And the question that nobody seems to always ask is, what's the price of the strength that we expect from men and boys? Boys are told to be strong, but not to be whole. To feel less and endure a lot more, a quiet erosion of their humanity. And so when you think about the fact that this is not just a problem that is in Nigeria or Lagos, it is an American problem, it's a Chinese problem, it's British, it's Finnish. It exists all over the world. There's an unwritten curriculum that has been served to men and young boys, and even the women in their lives, about what men should be and how they should be. Now, vulnerability is supposed to be only for women. Nobody thinks about the boys. And I worry about the level of lies that have been sort of like, that men have been indoctrinated with. Lies like, don't cry, man up. And I'm guilty myself because I keep telling my 8-year-old son when he's trying to weep, men don't cry. They're supposed to be strong. I don't think that until I got this topic to speak on, I understood how guilty I was as a mom. We teach suppression, we don't teach strength. Men are not allowed to cry. My husband's father passed, and I know how much he loved his dad, but I saw how much my husband never cried. And 10, 11 years later, every year, my husband is wallowing in the pain of being fatherless, but he never cries. But I know that the women around their families have cried several times as a way of expressing the emotions of pain and agony of loss that they feel. A boy is starving for tenderness, but he grows into a man allergic to any sort of vulnerability. And it explains why we see the world the way we have it today, because we have broken men trying to raise families. It explains why violence is mistaken for power when a man is unhappy with his wife or his daughter, or anybody else for that matter. The default mode is to go violent, to scream and shout. The men who are gentle are taken for granted because we reward dominance and we punish softness. And we then see the loudest ones with fragile egos as the masculine ones who carry power. Again, a classic example of what a great man should be is my husband, extremely soft-spoken, but you don't want trying papa. You don't want try yourself. I think the person who has taught me grit, taught me regard, taught me respect for humanity the most is my husband. I've been married to him, we've been married 11 years. It'll be 11 years this Friday, day after tomorrow. I've never seen my husband raise his voice, but I don't know a man even more grounded. He's taught me a classic lesson of the fact that it's not your voice that matters, it's the quality of your argument that matters. And so because I'm a choleric woman, I have a propensity to believe that I need to argue my way through. But I live with a man who doesn't shout, who knows how to get what he wants without raising his voice. And it will take me to the next point that I'm about to make as I move forward. When you think about the fact that a lot of the emotions that we see men express are not the real emotions that men want to express. I worry about the fact that we're seeing broken leadership, for example, at federal, state, and local governments of this country, and people would constantly say, give the women a shot at leadership because the men have failed us. I do not think that it's the men who have failed us. I think it is the society that has refused to hold the men accountable that is failing us. Men are a product of the society that they have come from. What kind of mothers raise these boys? When I see a badly behaved boy outside, I don't worry much about him. I'm thinking about his mom. Because my 8-year-old son knows how to fry dodo and knows how to dobale for the women in his life. He's only 8 years old, but I know that I've taught him that he's not in any way superior to the woman. And we don't live in a house where men are taught to watch TV and watch football and watch cars, while the women are learning all the skills in the world. Think about it. When you open newspaper adverts or you go online to see job vacancies, they're looking for certain skills. I'm the first child of 4 children. My mother is leaving the house and she says, Toyosi, I'm going to give you 50,000 naira. You're going to buy this and that. And she gives me a long list and I must accomplish them with that 50,000. And then she tells me that by the time she returns, my younger ones must have done their homework. Then she says that, Toyosi, women don't sit this way, women sit this way. Then she says, Toyosi, you don't speak with your voice high, you take it low, you are female. You don't argue, you have a conversation. Now think about the fact that all the skills that the companies in the world are looking for, what are those skills? Toyosi, don't talk to people like this. This is how to speak, interpersonal skills. Toyosi, take this 50,000 naira, you must achieve all this, budgeting and resources planning. Toyosi, you must be done by 6 o'clock, time management. Toyosi, you must not sit this way. You shouldn't sit this way, you should sit this way. Basic etiquette. What are the skills that the companies of the 4th Industrial Revolution are looking for? Those are the skills, but we focus so much on teaching the girls these skills and we don't prepare the boys. Forgetting that the girls are going to be girlfriends, friends, classmates, wives, and fiancés of this men that we have refused to intentionally invest in and pour into. There's a silent sacrifice that men are making. And if I take a deep dive into the lives of countless young men around our country, you'd see, like I mentioned, that men don't cry at the funerals of their parents. And even when long-term relationships end, it is the girls that we allow to express their emotions, the boys who've dated these girls for 10 years and feel bad because she left with a Gen Z zaddy because her Gen Z boyfriend is not able to provide her needs. We invalidate the feelings of the boys. Men are being conditioned to postpone their grief. And I think about our fathers and brothers at home as logistics managers. Go and organize this. Go and make that done. We even joke simply about things like when we're going out to parties, the women are supposed to spend 4 hours dressing up, and then the men are supposed to spend a flimsy 30 minutes dressing up. And so I always say, when you want to know if a man has a responsible woman at home or a woman that loves him, always look at how that man is dressed. To the little details like his beard. I like to say that it's 11 years, I still follow my husband to the barber's shop. And I try to tell where the pattern should be and how I like the friction to look. Because it's important that my husband doesn't just look good for them outside, but I want to wake up in the morning and say that this is my husband. And feel a certain type of way, because there are things that my husband can do for me, will do for me, that no other man is allowed to do them for me. And I have a responsibility to that man to ensure that he fulfills, he looks the path and continues to thrive. I talked about rewarding dominance earlier and punishing softness, but it's also important to talk about the fact that we celebrate aggression and shame vulnerability. We mold boys into armors. We're not molding them into human beings. I have one brother of 4 children, so we're 3 girls and a boy. And as I was preparing for this session, I kept thinking about my only brother and all the things that I held against him, forgetting that I had my mom to look up to growing up, but my brother had nobody to look up to growing up. And so my brother did his own growing up. And just because of this session, as I rounded up this presentation yesterday night, I forgave my brother for everything he's ever done to hurt my sisters and I. Because as we move forward and try to reprogram men, we need a new revolution that compares traps of survivals with a new revolution of reprogramming boys. Boys who grow up in survival mode are going to stay in survival mode. I always say that if you're constantly hustling, even as in your career, you're never going to have time to take a new course, to learn anything, to try to advance, because you're constantly working. You need time to breathe as a human being. The new code must give boys permission to feel, must validate the fears that boys feel, and teach emotional literacy early on in the day. And I want to talk about the power of role models and stories, because we always hear girls say, oh, my mother did this. Obina came on stage and talked so much about his dad, and I realized that not all the time do I hear men speak passionately about their fathers. They usually talk about daddy's girls and mommy's boys. We rarely see boys and their fathers in a love relationship. And it's a function of the kind of society that we're building as a people. The most profound lessons are not taught in lectures. They're lived. If a father or a mentor cannot say, I'm sorry. And we know, all of us know at least one man who is never be able to apologize. Not because they are bad people. They were just socialized not to ever be able to say sorry. Because sorry to them is a sign of weakness. We mustn't forget the roles of fathers and male mentors, not as instructors, but as mirrors, not as commanders, but as guides. Imagine a father getting angry and yelling the next day, and then the next morning he says to his son, my son, I was frustrated by work, not you. I'm sorry, I raised my voice. The anger was my fault, not yours. In this context, I was thinking about my brother as I wrote. Because when I look at my brother and how angry he is consistently, and even how he charges at my sisters and I realize that perhaps if our dad wasn't there, but we the women stood in the gap for him, maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't feel as alone as he currently feels or he used to feel. From rivalry to refuge, the trap teaches human beings, the trap teaches men that they must constantly just focus on, being strong, having money. In a materialistic society like Nigeria, men are not even excused for not having money. If you don't have money in this country, it's a crime. You are trying to date a girl who is not half as brilliant as you are, but money is the yardstick with which she's using to measure you. And you yourself are trying to do anything at all to please that girl, forgetting that you yourself has 200 times more potential than that woman, and that the right woman will come by. If she thinks that you don't deserve her because she's beautiful, then she doesn't deserve you because you're brilliant. Click it. The chap teaches men that relationships are a zero-sum game. The chap teaches men about hierarchy and structure. The new code teaches men that true male friendship is a refuge, is a non-judgmental space, and a place where men can feel free to confess how they feel. One of the things I learned one day, speaking to my son and just seeing how the striking resemblance between my son and his father is that I will be my husband's safe space. Have you noticed that a lot of our friends, our male friends, our brothers, our uncles, and our husbands don't speak to us, the women, because we're not able to contain our emotions? Let them offend us in 2 weeks. Everything they confessed to us 2 weeks ago, we're going to use it against the men. And that's why men don't speak to the women in their lives. They prefer to speak to men like them. There are things that a man cannot solve with his boys. There are problems that a man is feeling or experiencing or challenges is facing, that it is only the woman in his life, the woman in his life that can give him that safe space and stability to be able to thrive. What does the blueprint of a whole man look like? The blueprint of a whole man is not in the shape or size or height of that man. The blueprint of a whole man is in the fact that the mothers, who are the first architects of any child's life, must define exactly what a boy should be like. Schools, for example, have a role to play in terms of even their policy changes. When a boy is shamed for feeling, he learns that his deepest self is unacceptable. It leads to internalized trauma, a life spent hiding from himself. We must fill the trauma by removing the shame that men feel or men are socialized to feel. We have to embed emotional intelligence into our curriculum. You can't shout at my son in school, for example. I have one daughter and one son, but I know that I constantly speak of my children, because for me, they are the mirrors of the character that I'm building as an individual. We now have a continent full of boys waiting to be saved. And so reprogramming the child is actually nation building. I worry these days that all the programs we're designing and all the things that the donors are funding are focusing on girls in tech, femtech, women in this, and men in that. And I'm telling myself, I understand. I understand the fact that women feel like we've been discriminated against for too long. And I'm one of those, and I'm a woman. So I understand and I empathize. One of the things that makes me very angry is the fact that I know that it just wasn't possible for a woman to be in the room when they were doing the product design of a seatbelt in a car. If a woman was in the room when they were doing the product design of a seatbelt in a car, she would have raised it that we're going to get pregnant, and this belt is not going to work for us. If it didn't day, it didn't day. Right? But so we understand that discrimination has worked against women for donkey years, but we cannot use one wrong to right another wrong. By over-focusing on the girls and refusing to train the boys and invest in the boys. Because for every time you say 60% of the slots are going to go to the women, you are naturally extricating the men and exempting them unintentionally. But whether you like it or not, it's a bias or a stereotype. And the more women speak of these issues, especially because I want to be able to see more young girls not being beaten by violent men who are simply venting because they were told that they were not enough. Chimamanda Adichie is the one that said that our hope is that a boy sees his friend weeping and he doesn't just give him a handkerchief to dab his face and stay silent. Rather, he sits beside him and asks him, "What can I hold for you?" But beyond boys holding space for each other, I want to charge the women in the room this afternoon that we have a responsibility to hold space for the men in our lives. We have a collective responsibility to do three things, even as we walk out of this room, because I'm not one given to constantly talking about problems without focusing on solutions. Number one, live vulnerably. If you are a man, feel free to cry. The book of Lamentations was not written because of you. If you feel a type of way, speak to someone. What's the sign? I was on my way here, and a friend of mine wrote to me to say, Toyosi, I feel alone in the world. I'm just telling you, I don't need pity, I don't need attention, but I need to speak. The next thing I said, I didn't say, oh, let us pray. I said, where are you? I'm going to come to you once I leave here. And I need to take you to lunch, and I want you to talk to me. And I need you to trust me that I will hold space for you. Sometimes people need more than money. They just want to know that there are people in their lives who genuinely care. And I hope that as we close this session, we will remember to create a world where boys don't have to break just for them to prove that they are men. My name is Dr. Toyosi Akerele-Ogunsiji, and I thank you for listening.